Hello everyone and welcome to the channel, Ontario Law and the Older Person. And for this video, we're going to be talking about advanced care planning, and it's one video over a number that I'm going to be making. The information provided in this video is not legal advice. It is relayed for the purposes of general information. No legal decisions should be made based on this material. Any viewer who needs legal advice should contact a lawyer. Okay, so this is an article that's a little older. It's from 2018, but it does raise some interesting points. The link is in the description. So it is from the Canadian Family Physician site, and it's called Advanced Care Planning in Family Medicine Training. A direct quote: advanced care planning is a process that includes reflection and communication about a patient's values, beliefs, goals, and preferences to best prepare his or her future medical care. The designation of a substitute decision maker is a key element of ACP. So part of your process is going to be figuring out who you want to trust with making decisions about your future care when you lack the capacity to make those choices yourself. A direct quote: why is ACP important? Without the direction provided by ACP, families often feel burdened by directing medical care in crisis situations and might feel ill-prepared to make decisions owing to a lack of understanding of the patient's values and preferences. When no previous direction has been documented, physicians often resort to using full resuscitative and medical care. This can mean aggressive treatments that the patient might not have wanted and might result in unnecessary suffering for both the patient and family members. Now, I had a family member who had agreed to be power of attorney for personal care, not for me, for another family member, without truly understanding what that meant. And so this other person, the one who had granted this power, they were in hospital, they lacked capacity, and now the person I know who had that power was bombarded with requests, whatever, demands from nurses and from physicians, and she was so stressed out, and they never did talk in advance about what kind of decisions would be wanted. And so it turned into quite a difficult situation because the person with the power ended up making decisions that seemed totally reasonable. But then when this other person regained capacity in this medical setting, was furious with the decisions made. So yeah, it can get very messy when this isn't properly managed in advance. Another quote: previous research has highlighted numerous benefits of ACP, including the following: improved quality of end-of-life care, improved patient and family satisfaction with end-of-life care, reduced stress and anxiety for families, reduced stress and length of stay, increased use of hospice care, shorter stays in the intensive care unit. This is a document called Advanced Care Planning, a closer look, and it's from June 2024, as you can see. And one of the reasons I like this report is they also discuss people who are not lumped in with everybody else. So as I've mentioned in another video, a lot of research focuses on the same kind of person, which tends to be people who are cisgendered, heterosexual, white, born in Canada, which makes a difference, and of reasonably sound health and reasonably sound financial status, and not with a disability. And so if you want to find information about people outside of that narrow little scope, you generally have to go looking for that in particular. In this case, I was just looking for more information about advanced care planning and found this. And it's like, yay, they also talk about people with a disability. So another quote: Ipsos conducted an online survey among 3,047 Canadians, 18 and older, representative by age, gender, region, and disability. The total sample of those living with a disability was 1,292. The survey was fielded between January 31st and February 20th, 2024. The survey was conducted in English and French. So I really appreciate it when they tell us who they're talking to and how many. So in a way, that's a pretty large sample, slightly over 3,000. But again, always keep in mind how many people would be in that age group throughout Canada overall. So we're talking about millions of people. So always keep that stuff in mind. And then again, another quote where they talk about the limitations, which is again great. Not all studies are this open about limitations. So As with any study, there may be potential limitations when interpreting the results. One, the study was conducted using an opt-in online panel. This may lead to self-selection bias. So anyone who's not comfortable operating online in this way, they're not going to choose to participate. Two, by the nature of methodological approach, opt-in online survey, the respondent sample in this study may not reflect the experiences of all individuals living with intellectual disabilities. The severity of intellectual disabilities ranges from mild to moderate to severe or profound. And so that is a situation where someone, first of all, might find it difficult to communicate in this way, but also, at a certain point, sometimes people don't have the capacity to understand what their health needs are and what kind of instructions they should be giving. So this is the first of a number of summaries, I guess, of information that they got from the study. So number one, who Canadians are talking to most about their health and personal care wishes. We're going to talk about wishes later in this video. A majority of Canadians, 77%, have given thought to their future health and personal care wishes. Many have talked to family members, followed by close friends. 1 in 5 have engaged with a healthcare provider, and we're going to look at that stat. This has increased threefold since 2019, but significantly fewer have engaged with lawyers, financial advisors, and or spiritual advisors. Another quote, healthcare providers are a key touch point for advanced care planning. The majority of those who engaged with a healthcare provider rated their experiences very positively. However, there is a perception among some Canadians that healthcare providers do not have the confidence/skills to talk to patients about advanced care planning. And I would be interested in hearing from people, do people get any kind of training in that field? Many Canadians think advanced care planning should start when one is healthy and young. Canadians believe the most important time to plan for future health and personal care needs is when they are healthy, so 43% of those polled. Fewer say it should be done when making a will, 21%, after a diagnosis of a chronic illness, 8%, or life-threatening illness, 8%. In fact, almost half think one should start planning under the age of 50, which is probably a good idea. And it's a bad idea to leave it to the last minute, because if someone is facing a significant health issue and it's looming over them, it's not something in the future, it's happening right now. Well, as you can imagine, people aren't in the right headspace to make the best decisions. And one thing to keep in mind is this is a process. So someone might make certain decisions based on their health when they're 50, and they might over time change those choices as their health changes. But it's definitely good to get started in thinking things through and letting people know what someone's desires are when it comes to treatment in healthcare. Despite many Canadians thinking about their health and personal care needs, few currently have an advanced care plan. Less than 1 in 5, 17% of those polled for this report, Canadians have an advanced care plan. What do you think might be stopping people from moving forward with that? If they already think it's important, why do you think people are choosing not to? Well, here are some of those barriers. There are several key perceived barriers to engaging in advanced care planning, including emotional barriers around talking about illness and death and a lack of confidence in the ability to communicate wishes and values. Trust that a loved one will know their wishes, so there is no need for advanced care planning. So here people are making an assumption, oh, of course my kids will know what I want because, we've lived together, they know what I want, I don't need to tell them, which is a very risky approach to have. Not having someone they can trust or provide support. And this can be a real problem. We are understanding that there are some older people in particular, they're seniors, and they might be living in isolation. They might not have a family member or friend who's willing to take on this role. Lack of awareness of supports and services and where to find them. Lack of financial resources to engage a lawyer or other professional. Another quote, cultural norms are evolving to create a space more welcoming of open discussions about illness and death. The COVID-19 pandemic has had an impact on how Canadians are thinking about their health or personal care needs. 8 in 10 Canadians in this poll think there needs to be more acceptance around talking about sickness and death in our society. And this is something I came across pre-COVID. I don't know if it's something that might change, but there are certain cultures where it's considered wrong to let an ill person know how ill they are. Like they have to provide them with optimism to keep up their morale. So, is that something that might be changing? Now we have some information dedicated to those living with disabilities. So, quotes, Canadians living with a disability are more likely to have given thought to or talked to someone about their future health and personal care needs. However, only 20% of those living with disabilities have an advanced care plan. This is only slightly higher than the general population at 17%. Two, barriers to advanced care planning. Over one third, 36% of Canadians with disabilities report that their disability hinders their ability to engage in advanced care planning conversations. There were mentions of negative emotions and stigma, physical challenges, a lack of financial resources, and a need for greater support and resources from healthcare providers. So, as we all know, we don't have enough healthcare providers to meet everyone's needs. Just the numbers are too low. And people with disabilities, depending on the nature of the disabilities, might have more difficulty reaching out and finding a healthcare provider, and then a lack of financial resources. So I'm just throwing this out there. Um, I think we're aware that people with disabilities are less likely to have higher levels of income or other financial support. Okay, so this chart represents who people from the general population are talking to about their advanced care planning. And no, the number is not going to result in 100% because it's not like people are talking to only one person. But most likely, if they're going to talk to someone, it's a member of their family. We can see this here, and we can see a dramatic increase from 2019 to 2024. In 2019, which is the list of numbers on the far right there, telling family members 36% in 2019, and then in 2024 up to 61%. And that is possibly the COVID factor, right? So 2019, before COVID hit, 36. 2021, COVID has hit, jump up to 59%, and then 2024, 61%. So that's good. Um, we have those increases when it comes to close friend, not that significant, but that we have increases since COVID, and a healthcare provider. However, a decrease in talking to lawyers, which is interesting, at least from 2021 to 2024. So why? Is that because lawyers are getting more expensive? And the same thing is with a financial advisor, lower. And that's kind of interesting, that financial advisor is really someone you would talk to. I mean, it's good to talk to your financial advisor, but that's more about property, I would think, than what is usually considered part of advanced care planning. And then we have information about people with a disability. As you can see, we don't have all the same information. We've only got numbers from 2024. And as it says, there's a little bit of an increase in them talking to various people, except for financial advisors. Now we're going to take a little closer look at some of the barriers to advanced care planning that we touched on earlier in this video. And in this information, they distinguish between the experiences of those in the general population from those living with a disability. And we might want to think about why those with a disability are experiencing these barriers to higher numbers, which is what we're seeing here. So the first statement, I don't feel confident in my ability to communicate my wishes, values, preferences for advanced care planning. And so 27% from the general population polled said yes, like they agree with this statement. 30% of those living with a disability. So why? What kind of disabilities might there be? Now, I would say the basis for this issue overall is just a lack of knowledge. People don't talk about advanced care planning enough. And there's all sorts of presentations you'll find about needing to plan for your estate, but not as much information about what kind of ideas you should be thinking of more long term, not one and done, but as your life changes over time, what you want that life to look like. And people might not know what the options are, what the possible issues might be, and then how to communicate that. I don't have someone I can trust with my decisions about my health and or personal needs. So 24% of the general population, 27% of those living with a disability. And we're talking we talk a bit about old people who are getting lonely, for example, who are staying single and maybe don't have family close by who knows them well enough. So we do talk a little more about people becoming more and more isolated over time, and you might not have someone in your life. You just don't. A lot more people are having that experience. So that's a little problematic. Okay, and then I don't have support from my family and friends to talk about my wishes and values. So 21% out of the general population, 24% out of those with a disability. Now, here's the thing, values and wishes can be very different within a family. So, for example, I'm going to just touch on medical assistance in dying. You have some people who are very much opposed to it, no matter what the circumstances. And that could be a reflection of, for example, their religious beliefs, whereas others are maybe of a different mindset. They want MAID as an option. So there's actually a case where there was an older couple. He wanted MAID. She was morally opposed to him getting MAID, and she tried to stop that. And the thing is, she was trying to claim he didn't have capacity to make that decision. And here's a situation where she is not the substitute decision maker for this man. She was his spouse, but he hadn't chosen her as a substitute decision maker. Plus, they found that he didn't lose capacity. He still knew exactly what he wanted to do and had the capacity to make that choice. So here we had a couple where there was a difference of opinion basically about what was a moral choice, and an example where she was a spouse, but that doesn't mean she's a substitute decision maker. Anyways, so that can show up in a lot of different ways about within a family or different friends having different values. And can you trust that other person to act according to your wishes as opposed to what they think is right? So moving on to different categories, I cannot afford a lawyer or professional to help me prepare an advanced care plan. So that's 58% from the general population, 62% from those living with a disability. And I don't know, for me, a lawyer wouldn't be the first choice of who I want to talk about advanced care planning, because to me, it's more of a health and lifestyle related sort of thing. But, you know, di different approaches, I guess. I have not had anyone ever talk to me or seen any information about advanced care planning. So 57% general population, 58% those living with a disability. And yeah, the information is out there. As I mentioned earlier, though, there aren't many people who gather together and give presentations like they do with other issues about, for example, getting older. It is difficult for people across different backgrounds to find services and supports around advanced care planning. And so, yep, 48% from the general population, 53% those living with a disability. And yeah, finding healthcare providers in general is difficult. And then, can you find healthcare providers that understand your values and don't try to impose their values on you? And of course, I'm saying healthcare providers, they mean anyone in any services. So we have a very diverse population. Is everyone able to get access to culturally informed service providers? I guess. I do not know where to find information or advice about advanced care planning. So that's 47% general population, 50% living with a disability. And of course, yes, you can always go online, but as I mentioned earlier in the video, the information you're finding might not be suitable to the jurisdiction that you're in. Different provinces and territories might have different services and different laws. So it is a struggle. And this is a diagram about whether people with a disability felt that disability had an impact on their ability to get access to advanced care planning resources, if you will. And unfortunately, only 35% felt there was no impact. We have 13% saying high impact, 24% saying moderate, and then 22% saying low, excuse me, low, but still an impact. And we can think about, why is that happening? And does it matter according to what kind of disability? And So, for example, the nature of a disability, is it mobility? Does that mean they can't get face-to-face services because they can't get somewhere? Is it a kind of disability which means they need different kinds of information provided in different kinds of ways? Are they facing ableism from the service providers who don't treat them with the respect that they're entitled to? And then we have this situation where the chart divides into different categories, people who have a disability and the impact it might have on being able to access advanced care planning services. So with a physical disability only, it's 28%. When it's a cognitive disability only, it's 38%. And then when it's both physical and cognitive disability, it's 40%. So we do have a situation where a lot of people think if someone has any kind of cognitive disability, they just can't make decisions. And so it's a form of bias that can show up. They're just not being trusted to make those decisions. But then, of course, there can be some extent of cognitive disability where they really can't grasp the issues, can't make decisions. Then we have a situation with both physical and cognitive disability having the highest amount of problems, if you will, seeking these services. And if you think about it, right, this person's not going to have the same healthcare provider or services based on physical and cognitive, right? It's not going to be one group of people. If you have issues that are physical, you're going to have these experts. If you have issues that are cognitive, you're going to have different experts. So it would be difficult to have a holistic approach to planning for your advanced care plan. So I'm leaving that report, which actually has a whole lot more information. I kind of recommend it. It's a very easy read. It's just it would take a lot more time to have a lot more of that information here. So I'm moving on to a statute, the Healthcare Consent Act. And this is a statute that I've already touched on in other videos, and I will touch on with more depth later. But part of this is about, well, let's say someone can't make their own decisions. Who's going to make those decisions for them, and what kind of decisions can they make? Now we're going to talk about wishes, basically what people want to have happen once they've lost capacity. So under Section 5, subsection 1, a person may, while capable, express wishes with respect to treatment, admission to a care facility, or a personal assistance service. So while capable, that is the important bit. That's why it's best to do this earlier rather than later. Because if a person loses capacity, and has not already expressed wishes, the person who ends up being their substitute decision maker, A, won't know what those wishes were, and B, might not be able to follow the wishes of someone who has lost capacity. If that person who has lost capacity no longer understands the nature of their condition or what the realistic approaches are, their wishes might not be possibly followed. It's not like they should be ignored altogether, but it is most important that it be done while the person still has capacity. Okay, subsection 2. Wishes may be expressed in a power of attorney, in a form prescribed by the regulations, so that's if the law says here's a different kind of form, in any other written form, orally, or in any other manner. So in Ontario law, wishes can be expressed in any way. Subsection 3. Later wishes expressed while capable prevail over earlier wishes. So someone's values or opinions or the options might change over time. So if someone expresses wishes in their 40s, so they tell someone, they write a document, what have you, but then in their 50s change their mind and express different wishes, well, then once they lose capacity, someone's making a decision on their behalf. They have to take the information from their 50s, not their 40s. But here's where we can have a bit of a complication given the way our law works. So let's say that person in their 40s wrote a document saying, this is my substitute decision maker, here are my wishes. And then in their 50s, same substitute decision maker, but different wishes orally, not on a piece of paper. This can cause some problems because people will assume that because it's written, the written document should prevail when it's supposed to be the later date. So this can cause a lot of confusion, which is why, in this case at least, you'd want a lawyer to give you some advice on how to make sure your wishes stay up to date and will be honored. Now, I've put down here This does not represent consent to treatment. So a person might have a document saying, these are my wishes. That does not represent consent. Practitioners must get consent from either the patient while they have capacity or their substitute decision maker when proposing treatment. And there are some exceptions, which include emergencies. But the wishes are not consent to treatment. They're just letting the substitute decision maker know these are the kinds of things I want you to do on my behalf. Then we look at principles for giving or refusing consent. So Section 21, subsection 1, a person who gives or refuses consent to a treatment on an incapable person's behalf shall do so in accordance with the following principles. 1. If the person knows of a wish applicable to the circumstances that the incapable person expressed while capable and after attaining 16 years of age, the person shall give or refuse consent in accordance with the wish. 2. If the person does not know of a wish applicable to the circumstances that the incapable person expressed while capable and after attaining 16 years of age, or if it is impossible to comply with the wish, so maybe the wish isn't founded on realistic expectations, like what is possible, what is not, the person shall act in the incapable person's best interests. And then moving on to a discussion about best interests, there's actually a lot more to the statute under this area. I'm just focusing on this little bit. Subsection 2, in deciding what the incapable person's best interests are, the person who gives or refuses consent, so the substitute decision maker, on his or her behalf shall take into consideration A, the values and beliefs that the person knows the incapable person held when still capable and believes he or she would still act on if capable. So, for example, let's say I'm the substitute decision maker. I know this person well. I've known them all my life. So they have lost capacity and didn't express any wishes in a like a formal way to me. But I know they have certain religious beliefs and that they're very strong in those beliefs. We might have had discussions about religion. So even though they didn't express their exact wishes to me, I could say, well, knowing how this person feels about this issue because of their religion, this is how I'm going to make a decision. And again, it has to be on what they wish or what they value, not what I value. So even if someone doesn't explicitly express their wishes, there are other ways that those values can be determined and using those values to make decisions on their behalf. Okay, this will be the last little bit I talk about for this video. So I touched on the issue that just because someone has lost capacity, it doesn't mean you ignore altogether the wishes they are expressing now, having lost capacity. There's still something to be considered by the substitute decision maker. So section 35, subsection 1, a substitute decision maker or a health practitioner who proposed a treatment may apply to the board, that's like a tribunal that's defined by the statute, don't worry about it for now, for directions, so advice if you will, if the incapable person expressed a wish with respect to the treatment. So they've lost capacity, they're expressing a wish. But A, the wish is not clear, so they're not communicating it in a clear way. B, it is not clear whether the wish is applicable to the circumstances. So this person has lost capacity. They might think they have condition A when in fact they have condition B. So do those wishes apply or do they make sense with both A or B? Maybe not. C, it is not clear whether the wish was expressed while the incapable person was capable. Or D, it is not clear whether the wish was expressed after the incapable person attained 16 years of age. So I find that a little weird that they have the 16-year mark there. Uh, Given they're minors, we do allow, say, 14-year-olds to have decision-making power when it comes to serious conditions like cancer, for example. We do know of younger people who have been allowed to make those decisions as long as they're, emotionally mature and they understand the circumstances and the nature of those decisions. So it's kind of weird for me that they have that 16-year cutoff. But the most important thing to take from that is if someone is a substitute decision maker and the incapable person is expressing a wish, that wish should still be considered even though the person has lost capacity. So that's where we're ending for this video. If you like this kind of information, it'd be great if you subscribe to this channel. Thank you for getting to the end of this video and have a great day.